quirky host origin stories, naive and hopeful plans for this podcast series. All this and not a mispronounced word and slight... Damn it! All this and more on episode 0 of Written Off. Welcome to episode 0 of Written Off. Now, if you've clicked on this, if you've downloaded this, hello, how are you? How are you doing? This episode 0 is going to be something of a soupçon, a sampling of what is to come. To be honest, whenever I start a new podcast, I always skip episode 0. So you are already doing much better than me. I always start with episode 1 or the latest episode or whatever, but here's you listening to episode 0. Thank you very much. I should introduce myself. By the way, my name is Bradley Freeman, and with me, as always, is my talented co-host, Mark Tasker. Mark, how are you?
I'm all right, and I'm curious what percentage of people download their podcasts. I tend to do that, but I think with like 5G or with people's ability to sort of listen to things on the hoof, I don't know why I pronounced that like Robert De Niro, but I'd be curious to know how many people just stream it straight off the bat or how many people download it. I would say downloading is probably a dying art.
Oh, shit. I always download all my podcasts. Normally when I'm listening, I'm all over the place. I'm in the car or I'm going for a run or something. And once I've got it on my phone, I don't have to worry about service.
Brad lives in New Zealand, everyone, where service is perhaps more patchy than if someone, because it's an interesting thing. I've recently upgraded. I've recently got a new phone. This is the first 5G phone I've ever had. I can say for certain that streaming is a lot quicker on this, no matter where I am. Unless in your case, you're running over in, fields and stuff. That's a little bit different. I think if you're doing that, but even now, service has got so much better. I'd be very curious to know how many people religiously download like maybe you and I do traditionally. Be curious to know.
How about for those who are listening to this episode 0, here's what you can do. Go to Instagram, type in Written Off Pod, and you'll see the same picture logo thing that's right on this podcast. Synchronicity! Leave us a comment, DM us, or whatever the cool thing is to do. Let us know. Do you download? Do you stream? What other version is there? But basically, yeah, very curious.
What other version would there be? Do you intuit? Do you somehow pull it from the ether? I will hopefully get to talk about Cronenberg at some point. Yeah, they would find another way of you to be able to get this ported directly into your brain, or probably in Cronenberg's case, some organ.
Ladies, gentlemen, and those who know better, that snuffling and gruffling and barking is the sound of a pug I just stole from YouTube to announce to you that yes, Mark has already snuck in a Cronenberg reference. It's at this point I am proud to declare
the Written Off drinking game.
Anytime you hear Mark talk about Cronenberg, talk about art house cinema, sound design, music, you take a big drink. Anytime you hear Bradley, me, reference a Spielberg movie, Ghostbusters, segue with the expression speaking of, or use the word ostensibly, you take a big-ass drink. By the end of one episode, you're gonna be fucking drunk. Oh, and also take an extra drink if Bradley does some kind of weird accent that he thinks is pretty cool and funny, but really is just embarrassing for everyone, including you, listener, including you.
The Written Off drinking game.
I figure, Mark, the kind, inquisitive person who listens to this particular episode wants to know 3 things. Number 1, who the fuck are we? Number 2, how did we meet? And even then, that's debatable. And number 3, how's this podcast going to differentiate itself from all the rest of the movie podcasts out there? Also, what is the best song ever produced and why is it Stevie Wonder's Superstition?
Do you think Superstition?
Oh, no. What have I done?
I was really into Higher Ground when I was at university. I used to play it really loudly to the chagrin of my flatmates, I suppose. Yeah, I think it's one of the best produced songs of all time. Yeah. What were the questions? How the fuck did we meet? No, who the fuck are we?
You could tell who's the musician or the musically interested. I threw a musical title out there and I just threw everything else out the window. Who the fuck are we?
Well, who the
Mark?
fuck are you, first off?
I'm Bradley Freeman. Basically, I'm a writer. I've written novels. I've written screenplays. I've done some directing, done acting. God, that sounds fucking boring. I'm a son of a bitch who likes to write books. How about that? There you go. And my books tend to be horror adjacent, although I do have an action adventure romantic comedy in there. So yeah, look at me just contradicting my fucking self. Mark, who the hell are you?
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that. I am a creatively bankrupt slash bunged up person. I studied film at university.
Wait, bunged up. Is that a British expression?
Constipated, I suppose.
I thought bunged up was a Kiwi expression.
You'd have just nicked it off us, wouldn't you?
Anyway,
Yeah, so I studied film at university. I've had a long and torrid history with the arts, quote unquote. But as a 43-year-old man, I can barely make it through one film without falling to sleep these days. That's about it. I imagine this will be piped into some North Korean prison camp.
okay. Even though I highly doubt anyone gives one damn, Mark, do you remember how we met? I'll give you my side of the story first and let's see if it matches up. I'd been living in Tokyo, Japan since 2007, minding my own business. And then, a little while later, Mark and his wife moved over, and we wound up working in the same place together. I was, especially at that time in my life, desperate for some nerd interaction. I was surrounded by pretty serious people talking about KPIs and sales targets and even when they just talked about their hobbies were just boring shit like fucking sports. I met Mark eavesdropping a conversation he was having with someone else, and I noticed it was a movie conversation. And like the idiot I am, I just kind of glommed onto that conversation / him, and here we are now, still glomming.
What do you remember what that conversation was about?
When I was around you, it was The Last Jedi had just come out.
I mean, that is a film which one of the reasons I still really like it is because you can have legitimate, robust discussions about does it work, does it not. I wouldn't argue with anyone who really dislikes it. Not really. I think now that we've moved away from that, let's be honest, manosphere discussion of it, I think just looking at it as a film within that particular canon, does it work or not? It's a great film for discussion, 100%. And at the time, I remember Brad was vehemently in the against camp for, again, legitimate reasons. Wouldn't even really argue with his reasons, but I like an underdog. And at the time, the underdog was sticking up for that film. So I tried to find ways of sticking up for that film. So I think, yeah, and it has informed this podcast probably because you will hear that Brad and I come from things from a different direction quite a lot of the time, but I don't believe there's any arguing that ever takes place. There's a lot of listening, which you'd like to think would be the preeminent way of discussing art. Listen, think, come back. That's how it should be. And that's how I hope this will be when you listen to it. Two people who are genuinely engaged with the thing they're talking about and with each other's opinion of the thing they're talking about.
Because of Mark's opinion on Last Jedi, I swung the other way around. And now I really, really like that movie. It took me 1 or 2 rewatches and just some distance away from it. I was bringing the weight of what I expected Star Wars to be, where very clearly Rian Johnson and Kathleen Kennedy and everyone behind the scenes were trying something new, and I applaud them for that. It's an impossible ask, but I wish there'd been a way to be forewarned about what that movie was going to be so that the audience at large, or at least the audience who were vocally against it, could have had time to assimilate it, think it through.
Mhm.
because then we would have had, hopefully, a very different third movie, Rise of Skywalker. I have not seen since, and I don't really want to revisit it.
50 years from now, if you were talking about how were blockbusters just pre-pandemic, those three would be probably the best way of talking about the interaction with social media, inflated budgets, predominance of bad CGI made under horrible pressure from people who are not being paid properly. And let's be honest, it's going to be the pre-AI, because anyone who thinks that's not coming is dreaming. We are going to have, at the moment, when you watch a film, the credits of a big budget film, the CGI, CGI technicians or engineers or people just worked on the CGI, the list is endless. That is going to shrink rapidly in the next 2, 3, 4, 10 years. You're going to probably just have CGI made by AI program X. So we're talking about before that Jurassic Park era of a few very dedicated, intelligent people moving into the mass army of people in God knows how many countries trying to collar together something with not enough help or resources, certainly not being paid enough, to AI, the influence again of social media, the way in which the dialogue between the audience and the filmmaker got out of hand, you could say. It was kind of fortuitous that we were talking about film at that time, because it is a really interesting, that trilogy is fascinating in a lot of bad ways, but still fascinating anyway. So yeah, that's probably the genesis of what we are doing in this podcast, is having a look at films. And I think it's good that we've got slightly different baseline tastes in films, because it drags me into watching things that I wouldn't watch but still enjoy. There's things to be enjoyed in almost any film apart from a Serbian film. There is things to be enjoyed in almost any film you'll ever watch.
Which leads me to talk about, what are we doing now? What is Written Off? How is it different from other movie podcasts? And basically my answer is, we are focusing not on bad movies. Okay, there are already plenty of podcasts out there talking about bad movies, making jokes, and be as negative as possible. That's not us. We're also not talking about great movies, because there are tons of podcasts all about great movies. No, we are talking about meh movies. We're talking about those films that you're having a conversation with a spouse, a family member, a buddy, brother, sister, whatever. They'll mention a movie. They'll say, "Did you see A Cliff by the Seaside?" And you'd be like, "What? A Cliff by the Seaside? No, I haven't seen that." And this person will tell you, no, I saw that with you in the cinema. Don't you remember? It's that movie with Joe Bloggs and Mary Fair. It's all about a cliff by the seaside, but there are aliens. And remember, the aliens at the end, they come in the car and the car explodes. You would say, "Oh, A Cliff by the Seaside."
Yeah, yeah.
And that's a really shitty example, but you know what I mean? It's a film where it hasn't occupied a lot of brain space. You saw it, you were like, okay. And then you forgot about it. And there are tons and tons and tons of movies we forget about, especially, as Mark mentioned, he's 43, I'm 44. I think by our very nature, we forget about most shit we see, especially in the streaming age. But this podcast is all about meh movies that could have been a little bit better with just a few changes. Maybe a character deletion here, an extra scene or two here, maybe re-editing the flow of the movie, maybe more jokes.
Whereabouts we are on the streamer bell curve, I'm not quite sure. Every day God, how many things are uploaded every day? And a lot of it is meh, maybe even by design meh. I think it is a good opportunity, or it's good timing to have these kinds of discussions. And I don't know how many people have the time or energy to have these discussions, but we will say repeatedly, we are not here to tell you this is what should be done, or that we're better than the people involved in these projects. I don't believe I'm better than anyone involved in any of these projects, but it's interesting to pick it apart a little bit and think, why does it look the way it looks? What influences were there? And sometimes we will talk about background influences or production incidences or whatever's happened in order to see what we see on screen. And other times it will just simply be, why did X writer progress the story in the way they did? So there is a little bit of something, depending on the film. There might be more focused on the non-diegetic outside of the screen production element, and other times it will just literally be, why is that character walking left instead of right?
What do we not want with this podcast? We don't want to be bullies. Of the few episodes featured that neither of us enjoyed, come on, we still weren't dragging it through the coals. Movies are an impossible thing. We get that. Anywhere from 80 to 2,000 people are attempting to work on this one story, and what crosses the finish line can often be vastly different from what was intended. No, we are not above hitting below the belt. And believe me, Mark is an expert ball puncher. He's the podcast version of Mads Mikkelsen in that first Daniel Craig Bond movie, where he's just decimating Craig's nuts with frightening precision. Yeah, that is Mark to a T. But look, we promise to be mostly respectful, mostly fair, and always interested in what could have been, how these films might have been able to be a damned good time at the cinema, if not just for a few changes here or there.
Hopefully, as things develop, we'll get to hear others' opinions, and hopefully it will be a nice choral discussion that enables every voice into the space. I think I am sick and tired of people trying to, as Brad used the word bully, which is what it is, people bullying other people and saying, no, what I say is the correct interpretation of this. That's probably 70 years out of date in film criticism, probably more than that. Anyone who's doing that is never going to get into this space, I would like to think. I think it's just fun to imagine the what ifs. Everyone likes to imagine a what if, don't they? So yeah, there are occasional moments where we may be a bit frustrated, to put it mildly, with choices that have been made, but it's out of love, I'd like to think. So yeah, hopefully there's not any, maybe Zack Schneider, but no one else is going to get a kicking.
And like Mark said before, we do not consider ourselves above any of these people. Look, they went off and made a movie. They made a movie with famous people. They got a movie that was shown globally. Mark and I have not done that, okay? We're just a bunch of fucking idiots making a podcast about movies. There, I said it, okay? We realize how fallible we are. We just want to have a good time. In fact, I would love it if someone listens to an episode and they are like, yeah, that would have made it a bit better, but you know what? How about this? And then they go on our Instagram, Written Off Pod, and they send us a message and they say, you fucking morons, you're completely wrong. Here's what should have happened. And then I block that person and call them a cunt.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No. But that would be the ideal situation. People talking about movies that didn't get the shine they wanted, but hopefully by talking about them here, and let's be honest, everyone's film is subjective. I've already got some guest hosts lined up for the future, and a couple of them have been like, wait a minute. You guys did an episode on A Cliff by the Seaside? That's my favorite movie of all time, with Joe Bloggs and Mary Fair. That's not a movie. Go fuck yourself. To be fair, yeah, they're right. But also, why not?
Yeah, exactly. They're right, but also why not? Opinions are like arseholes, as everyone knows. But the fun thing is we can all rub arseholes together and see what comes out.
Oh, you poor bastard. That sounds like something I would say.
There we are.
It's taken all these episodes we've recorded to come back and do episode 0 for you to stoop to my level.
Yeah, well done. Your evil influence has finally bedded in.
Mark, off the top of your head, can you tempt any potential future listener about some episode titles we have coming up for season 1? I'll give you some, dear listener. We've got an Indiana Jones Dial of the Destiny episode coming down the pipe. We've got the 2025 requel, legacy sequel of I Know What You Did Last Summer, coming in 2 weeks' time. When this podcast comes out, I'm going to drop episode 0 and episode 1 on the same day. And then every fortnight or every 2 weeks for you Americans. So every 2 weeks, there will be another podcast episode. And don't worry, we're not going to be one of those podcasts that are like, yeah, we're pretty constant, we're pretty good. And then we drop off the face of the earth and you never hear from us. I actually have a bunch of followed shows on my podcast app that are just ghosts. The last time I put out an episode was 4 years ago. There's nothing.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and that's a shame because it's like, I understand when a TV show doesn't get a farewell episode because they're canceled all of a sudden. But when a podcast doesn't have a farewell episode, it seems unfinished. That won't be us.
It probably won't be us. We are.
We'll see the end coming. Trust us.
I would say that most of the films we watch would be from the 80s to the present day. Sometimes we do films that have come out very recently or more recently. Other times we do Tommy Lee Jones's Volcano, which is just a fantastic film. Well worth an hour and 40 minutes or whatever it is. It's a real smorgasbord. So hopefully, if you don't really like the sound of that film or you're not interested, then it's fine, because there'll be something else coming up shortly that will be quite different, probably. If I can compliment us, I would say we don't take the same approach for every film. So albeit the format may be relatively similar each time, the angles of attack are different. And when I've listened back to a couple of the ones that Brad has sweat over in recent days, it's clear that we've got different ways of looking at different things, which I think makes it more fun.
Each episode, we ask each other in hopefully entertaining fashion a handful of questions, starting with a basic summary of the film, who wrote it, the director, that kind of thing. And then we ponder out loud, number one, well, what did work? Actually, we always start with that. What actually did work? Number two, what was the first mistake the film made writing-wise? Number three, why do you think they made the overall story choices they did? Number four, does it try to add anything new to the genre or template? Yeah, number five is case by case. It's a prequel or sequel question. Why isn't it as good as the other films in the franchise? But number six, which is the real meat of the show, what scenes or changes would have made this better?
And that's a bit where you hear Brad come up with some really coherent, well thought through ideas based on other things he's read or seen. And you'll hear me floundering on the rocks, because I am definitely more a reactive person. So again, you're going to hear some flapping around my side, but eventually, hopefully, I'll come up with something that you might think is relatively interesting.
Call yourself a flapper, but at least you're my flapper.
Well, there we are.
So sit back, relax. Episode 1 is already out. Dwayne Johnson in Skyscraper. I mean, what a perfect beef of a film to start with.
Yeah, and please don't be put off by that.
Thank you for listening. I've been your host, Bradley Freeman. Go and check out the other episodes of Written Off. I swear you'll have a good time. If for no other reason than I desperately try to get your money by doing a different ad read every episode for one of my fucking books. I really put a lot of time and effort into trying to switch things up and entice you. So even if you just listen to those and laugh at how much of a dumb schmuck I am, that'll make me happy. And my co-host is Mark Tasker. Mark, thank you for joining me.
What a pleasure.
All right, everyone. We'll catch you for the next episode. As always, as you'll find out in our episodes, stay safe. Grab a slice of pizza. Grab a slice of pizza.
A pizza? Is that like
pizza?
Flavored pizza?
Oh, you gotta grab yourself a slice of pizza. Yeah. I mean, no episode is complete without me trying to put on some kind of weird voice or something.
Absolutely.
If you hear dead silence after my impressions, I swear to God, it's Mark is actually grinning. He's not just
he is
dead staring me. He does enjoy it.
He does.
Subscribe to us on your podcast app of choice. Give us a star review, whatever the thing is that happens with a podcast. Jump on over to Written Off Pod on Instagram. Send us a comment. You can also find me on Instagram and Threads at Brad is Writing. And Mark, no, don't even try. It's a barren wasteland, and Mark does not walk the social media path. Come join us for episode 1, Dwayne Johnson in Skyscraper. It's available right now. You can just keep on listening to us. Wouldn't that be great? Do not operate heavy machinery while listening to this podcast. Mark's witticisms will cause you to crash. That forklift you're driving will impale someone. I can see it happening right now.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.
See you for our next episode. Off is hosted by me, Bradley Freeman, and Mark Tasker. It's produced by the both of us, and it's edited by me. Our theme music is by Skane, and our artwork is by Sketchfro. This has been a Pugnacious Podcast production.